This is Cooking with Dave and Audie.
I'm Dave.
I'm Audie, and today we are finally talking about sous vide cooking.
We've been waiting for a time when we thought we could do this right. We think that having a podcast about it to introduce the idea is the way to go.
Absolutely.
And then we can start using it in our cooking. So, what is sous vide cooking? Loose translation, well actually direct translation means under vacuum from French.
Right.
Under vacuum.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what sous vide cooking is about. What sous vide cooking is about is being able to control the temperature of what you're cooking as precisely as you possibly can.
That's exactly right. And the classic way of doing that is taking a product, putting it in a plastic bag like a Ziploc bag or a vacuum sealed bag, and to submerge it in a temperature controlled water bath for a length of time so that you slowly bring the temperature of your product up to the ideal temperature of perfectly cooked whatever it is you're cooking.
So it's like cooking in an oven, but instead of cooking in air that's hot, you're cooking in water that's hot.
Right.
This is great for several reasons. The main reason is this. Water has a higher specific heat than air, meaning it holds more heat energy per unit weight of water compared to air.
Right.
And basically it's like 5 or 6 times as much heat than air does, maybe more than that. I didn't look it up, but I definitely know that's true.
And the important part of that is that when you drop something cold into this product, it doesn't dissipate the heat of the water itself.
Right, so when you put a roast into the oven, because that roast is at room temperature or refrigerator temperature, it lowers the temperature of the oven by dozens and dozens of degrees, sometimes 50, 60 degrees.
Right.
And then that oven has to work to catch back up to be at
Right.
the temperature that you want it to be at. In sous vide cooking, because water has a higher specific heat, it has a higher thermal energy capacity than air does, you don't take such a drop in heat when you put something
Right.
into the water bath. So you will definitely lose a little bit of heat, but it's probably a few degrees rather than a few dozen degrees.
Well, typically they'll say if you open your oven door, you're dropping the temperature by 20 degrees anyways.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
then you put something cold or
Yes.
room temperature into it, that'll drop it as well. I don't mean to belabor this point, but it's very important that you understand we are not physically putting a product like a chicken into water. We're putting it into a bag, and we're using the temperature of the water to transfer through that bag to the product.
Well, first of all, it
itself.
has to be a watertight container. Whatever you put your food into,
Right.
and for the most part, people use vacuum bags or zip-top freezer bags, that kind of stuff. But Audie and I have talked about this a little bit off camera. There are natural alternatives that you could use. So if you used in like sausage casing, intestines,
Right.
that's watertight. You could definitely sous vide something in that. You
Right.
could use things like an animal's bladder or stomach or something like that you
Right.
stuff food into, make watertight, and you could cook it in there that way. But the biggest difference here is when you're sous vide cooking, you want the temperature of your water to be at the final temperature you want your
That's
product
exactly
to
right.
be. So if you're doing a steak and you want a medium rare steak that's about 128 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to set your water bath to 128 degrees
Right.
Fahrenheit, which is very different than traditional cooking.
Without a doubt.
When you cook a steak in an oven, your oven's 350, 375 degrees. Even though you want the internal temperature of that steak to only come up to 128, 130 degrees Fahrenheit.
You'll see with most standardized recipes, whether you're frying something or you're throwing it in the oven, typically speaking, you fall in that 350 degree temperature range.
More or less, yeah.
You never want your product of food to ever get close, not even close to 350 degrees.
Definitely.
So what you're doing is you're playing this this game of chicken with time and temperature with your product,
Right.
so that you're cooking at a way higher temperature than you ever actually want your product to get, and you're just hoping through experience and
Practice.
technique and tools like a thermometer or something like that you can hit where you want to be at. Sous vide cooking is idiot-proof cooking because you just type in or you establish a temperature you want, and you just hold that product at that temperature.
That's right, and for that reason, it can never overcook.
That's
which is
right.
why it's a great way, sometimes even the best way, to cook things like pieces of meat. So like a steak or a chicken breast, turkey breast, a quail or
Right.
pork chop or whatever it is. Because you can control the temperature in such a precise way, you can never overcook that product.
That's right.
The only thing that you can do is cook it for too long, in which case it doesn't necessarily overcook, but it changes the texture in a way that makes it very tender and sort of unpleasant for a steak or a pork chop, because you want a bit of chew to it. So cooking is all about, and we've mentioned this a little bit in our previous videos, more specifically in our boiled eggs video where we laid everything out by time. Cooking is all about the control of basically 3 variables. There are some other ones, but the 3 important ones are this: time, temperature, pressure.
Right.
Time is basically up to you at all times. When do you put something in, when do you pull something out, whether it's the oven, a pot, or whatever else it is. Temperature depends on the equipment that you're using as far as being able to control it precisely. So in an oven, your precision comes down to a couple dozen degrees more or less.
Right.
When you're cooking in a deep fat fryer, comes down to, I don't know, 10 or 20 degrees more or less. If you're cooking on a, frying in a pot on your stove, you're gonna have a bigger fluctuation because you're cooking it on a burner. You can't control the heat so precisely. What's great about sous vide cooking is it's the most precise way to control temperature.
Absolutely.
And then when you want to talk about pressure in sous vide cooking, sometimes you want to put things under a negative relative pressure to the atmosphere. There are other cooking techniques like pressure cooking where you would want to put something under a positive relative pressure to the atmosphere. I find, in my experience, most things with sous vide it's probably best to not put under negative pressure. Sometimes it's appropriate, but most of the time not.
So explain what that means operationally speaking.
So a lot of people use vacuum bags and a vacuum sealer to prepare food products to be cooked sous vide. So it's basically a tube of plastic sealed at one end, and then you put your food product into it, and then before you seal it at the other end, you draw a vacuum on it. Now I say vacuum, it's not really a vacuum. You're basically removing the air from the bag. It's not a perfect vacuum by any means. But it's under negative pressure compared to the atmosphere.
Right. But and the reason people tend to want to go this way, and something we haven't mentioned right now, is it's incredibly important to make sure there is no air in the bag itself.
Yes.
We need direct contact of we need the plastic to be on the product that you're cooking so that the heat transfers directly and evenly to the product.
What Audie's saying here is whenever you put your food product into the sous vide bath, if you have little pockets of air in whatever your food product is contained in, you don't get good heat transfer from the water to your food product. There's that pocket of air that interrupts that. Is that a huge problem? Not really. Little bubbles of air are all right. You don't want your whole bag to be full of air. Otherwise, you're definitely not doing it right. And so let's talk about what this does to food as it's cooking. So it's really sort of the best way to do meats. And what's great about it is anybody can make the perfect steak. Anybody can make the perfect roast chicken, roast turkey with this technique.
Right.
But let's talk about meat specifically. When you're cooking meat sous vide, it's always going to be a moist cooking technique because the food product is cooking in its own moisture, basically, in a watertight container, bag, whatever you want to call it. But with meat, as meat cooks and absorbs heat, it goes through 2 processes. Those processes are coagulation and denaturization. So that's basically the proteins of that thing tightening up, winding up, squeezing moisture out. That's coagulation.
Right.
And then loosening up and sort of relaxing and absorbing moisture. That's denaturization. And as you're cooking a piece of meat, it goes through these phases over and over again. So it coagulates and squeezes moisture out, and then it denatures and absorbs moisture, and then it coagulates and denatures. So that, let's say, chicken breast is cooking in its own juices, and it's squeezing a little juice out, and then it's reabsorbing that juice, and then squeezing a little out and reabsorbing it. When you cook it in that way, the outcome is great for many reasons. It's going to be as tender and juicy as that piece of meat can possibly be.
Right.
Cannot possibly hold more moisture, cannot possibly be more tender.
Because with the coagulation that he's describing, when those protein strands tighten up on you and they leach out natural juices of the meat that you're cooking.
The moisture of the meat itself.
The faster you bring a product from one temperature to the next, to a high temperature, will do that more aggressively and leach out more liquid. And so the higher the temperature it is will also do that. What's great about this is because we're not going to 350 degrees and we're not trying to cook it in 2 minutes. we slowly create that coagulation, so it just slowly gets to it, and it leaches off the final product, the least amount of moisture you would lose.
To cook it to that temperature.
That's
Let's
exactly
make that a little bit more clear. So what I was talking about here is the difference in technique. If you slap a steak into a screaming hot cast iron pan that's 400 degrees or so, the proteins, as they hit that 400 degree heat, coagulate very fast and very hard and squeeze out a lot of moisture.
Right.
And if you cook a steak in a traditional technique where you sear it in a pan, finish it in an oven, it's cooking in an environment that whatever moisture it loses, it's never going to reabsorb,
Right.
because it steams off from the heat. If you cook it sous vide, because the temperature difference isn't as great, it coagulates slower, therefore losing less moisture. And then once it has finished coagulating to the temperature that it's going to be raised to, it starts to denature again and reabsorb some of that moisture. That moisture isn't lost
Right.
to steam.
Right.
It's still available to be absorbed back into that piece of meat, whether it's a steak or a turkey breast or whatever else.
There's things that classically trained, experienced chefs like David and I simply cannot do to the effectiveness of sous vide. An example is I did an event once where I cooked for 250 people. We had filet mignon and we had lobster tail. I was able to have one sous vide bath going on lobster tail and one sous vide bath for whole loins of filet. 250 people got a medium steak, which is what the chef wanted.
Wouldn't be Audie's choice.
They got a medium. 250 people got the exact same temperature steak, and everybody got perfectly cooked lobster tail.
So
It doesn't matter how great of a chef you
Right.
are, you could not do that without this technique.
traditionally, if you were going to do an event like that, traditionally, you'd have to cook your lobster tails and your steaks in batches, whether it's on a grill or on a stovetop in a
Right.
pan, finished in the oven, that kind of stuff. You have to be rotating those steaks in and out, and then try and get them out to your guests at the proper temperature. And because you can't be as precise with temperature through traditional techniques, there's going to be a temperature variation in
Without
each
a doubt.
steak that's being served one compared to another.
That's exactly right.
But when you cook it sous vide, you can cook them all in one batch.
Right.
You can cook them all to exactly the very same temperature, so there is no variation. So for big batch cooking, it's also a great thing as well, because you can do everything at the same time and you can do everything to exactly the same temperature.
If the goal was to be consistent, there's literally no tool in the cooking world that will help you achieve consistency greater than, well, we haven't even gotten into the tool itself, but the technique
exactly.
of sous vide.
That's right.
You will never
So-
do better than that.
Audie said tool. And for sous vide cooking, there are some great tools available. I want to talk about something else first, because sous vide really is a technique. It's not
Right.
a tool.
Agreed.
The technique involves a heat source, something to hold a water bath,
Right.
and then something watertight to put your food in to go into the water bath. And you want to be able to control the temperature of that water bath as precisely as possible. So we used to do what we call the poor man's sous vide technique, which is a pot of water on your stove with a thermometer, and you control the temperature of that water by adjusting the heat on your burner.
Well, so what specifically, we had this long, I think you got me one for my birthday one year, but we had a long thermometer that would clip on the side of like a pot, right? And we had water in there. We would slowly bring up on the stovetop, the burner would bring up the water to the temperature that we wanted,
Right.
then we'd turn off the heat. And then if the temperature dropped a little bit, we'd turn the heat up and then get back to that. If we went a little bit over, we'd drop a couple of ice cubes in there. And it was this just
And so you
constantly
use a
trying to
burner,
stay,
adjusting up and down little
Right.
by little to try and control the temperature very
maintain the
precisely.
temperature of the water.
And when you
Works.
use
Great.
that method, your level of precision is sort of basically within 10 degrees if you're paying attention.
Right.
It's not going to go up or down 10 degrees if you're paying attention and making little adjustments. And for most things that you would want to cook, that 10 degrees is really awesome. Is way more precise than any other
way more
technique
precise,
that you would use,
right.
like the traditional techniques.
So that's that literally is a technique you could do at home.
And
too.
that's what we recommend all of you start with.
Try it. Yeah.
You can get a great thermometer for $5 to $10 at probably your grocery store or Walmart, any local restaurant supply store, order it on Amazon, widely available. very good for proper kitchen use these days.
Yeah.
Almost anyone you find is worth paying money for. That's what we recommend you use to get started, because the cost of investment is like 10 bucks.
Right. So if you want to just try sous vide,
Then there
definitely do
are
that.
tools, machines that you can use to use this technique. These machines basically were adapted from laboratory use. This is a thermal immersion circulator. It has a couple of components. It's a water heater with a water pump, and then the thermometer and a temperature regulator.
That's right.
This cycles water in and out of the machine, and as it cycles it, it controls the temperature down to 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit, which is very, very precise. You may ask, is 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit very necessary for sous vide cooking? Generally, no.
Probably not.
But for some things, it actually does make a difference.
There has to be
Egg
something.
cooking is one of those things.
Yeah.
Every few tenths of a degree in temperature in egg cooking really does make a difference, almost a visual difference.
And the reason we're doing this podcast today is because we're about to roll out a boatload of really cool sous vide videos for you to see. And I've seen some videos that play around in the baking side of it that are very precise in the temperature they're trying to hold.
So we've generally talked about using this to cook meat, and our philosophy is more or less this is probably basically the best way to cook meat as far as any technique that's been established today. Maybe things in the future that are better than that. But you can use this to make sauces and marinades and brines. You can use this to cook fruit and vegetables. It is great for all kinds of different cooking practical applications.
And if you find yourself really enjoying this technique, it's important that you understand that when David and I started 10 plus years ago fucking around with sous vide, there was one company, Polyscience. The motherfucker was huge.
It was giant, and it was like $2,000.
It was $2,000. This right here is the single best tool on the market. This is the Jewel. No sponsorships. This is the Jewel.
Nice.
That would be nice. I need one. This is the Jewel. It's under $200. I mean, we're living in the future, people.
So like I said, this machine was adapted from laboratory applications, like chemical laboratory applications, by some scientists that were into food as sort of their side hustle.
It had to have been, right?
And then developed a way of using it for proper cooking application, and then created a market for people to buy these tools to use in cooking, and then some really smart entrepreneurial people built new machines for the application of cooking rather than the laboratory application. But when these machines first started being adapted to kitchen use, they were $2,000, $2,500 a piece.
Well, we joke about,
and they weren't very good in a kitchen. They were very sensitive pieces of equipment.
So we call the poor man method the poor man method because we couldn't afford a $2,000 immersion circulator.
That's exactly right.
And this
now there are machines on the market. If you want, our specific recommendation is the Joule by Chef Steps. And that's Joule, the word as a measurement of energy, Joule, not jewel like a stone. There are lots of other brands, there are lots of other machines. Most of them are pretty good.
Yeah. I know
like Audie said some other time, you can find them at Walmart more or less.
You can get one for $80 at Walmart right now. Like $80.
If you want to know what to look for in a machine, if you're interested in buying one, it's a couple of different things. You want to look at its wattage, its power usage.
Right.
That means how much energy it can put into the water, therefore be able to control the heat. So the higher power usage, probably the better. You also want to look at capacity.
See, that's
how much water can it hold
and
hot. That's the reason I got this one, because it's the highest capacity.
And they're not mutually exclusive. Your power will dictate what capacity you can actually hold consistently.
For the most part, yes.
But this, I think, does something like 9 gallons of water.
12 gallons.
12 gallons,
Yeah.
That's more than enough.
The next one I recommend is at 9 or 10 gallons. Also, you want to look at user interface a little bit. You want it to be easy to use. This one uses Bluetooth. There's an app that you use on your smartphone.
Right.
It's very, very simple. And what's great about this company specifically is when you download the app, if you don't have a lot of experience with sous vide cooking, they have a guide, basically a recipe guide. So if you don't know what temperature to cook your pork chop, they have a visual doneness reference that it's like 4 or 5 different temperatures,
Yeah.
and based on the visual appeal, you sort of pick which one you
Well,
want. Same for steaks and chicken and
Right.
turkey,
So
vegetable cooking, all kinds of stuff.
You'll hear David talk about, oh, I want just a little bit of blush on my chicken or a little bit of blush on my pork, right? That's because we're not scared of trichinosis, right? Like, that doesn't freak us out. But you might not be comfortable with
Your
that.
pork chop does not have to be cooked well done.
But-
I'm telling you right here, right
But
now.
what's great about the Jules app, the app on your phone, is it'll show you fully cooked.
Right.
Super juicy and
It'll
delicious.
give you that option, and all
And
you
then
do is
it'll
click
also
on
show
it,
you
and
nice-
it goes for you, right?
Yeah, and then it'll
or
show
if
you
you're
nice-
like us, where you kind of know where you want to be,
Right.
you can type in the temperature within 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit, and get it going to do whatever you want to do. And so, what's so exciting about getting this information out there, having this little discussion, is we've been chomping at the bit to start showing y'all some sous vide cooking.
We've already-
It really is a great technique, and for some things, it's the very best technique.
We've already shown it to you once.
And
all the
The prime rib video, but
Prime
we didn't
rib
really
sous vide.
talk about what sous vide means in any kind of detail.
Certainly
it was
not
one of
to
our
this
very
detail.
first videos, so it wasn't that great compared to what we're doing today.
No,
at
that
least
video
in
is
our opinion.
amazing. Don't even listen.
No, it's
to
good.
it.
It's good.
The food was delicious.
But we're better at making videos these
Way
days.
better. Yeah.
And so we're super excited to be able to show you how you can use this technique or this machine to really have spectacular cooking. Basically what it comes down to for me, Audie, is I think within the next 5-10 years, this piece of machinery is going to be ubiquitous in everyone's home.
Like
It's
a
as ubiquitous as a microwave.
As a microwave.
Everyone's going to have one.
That's exactly
What's
right.
great about that is I no longer have to go around to people's houses and choke down overcooked turkey
Right.
and overcooked steaks
Right.
and overcooked chicken breast. Anybody will be able to make the most perfect, tender, succulent, juicy
Right.
pieces of meat as I can. You know, traditional techniques take years and years of practice. You have to fail over and over again to start to understand how and why you do things with your own hands and your own eyes. This tool takes all of that away. You can, your first time cooking a chicken breast, make it exactly as good as ours without any practice or previous experience, and really sort of hit it, master it the very first time.
The learning curve with this technique is going to blow your mind. And sometimes it may come off that we're speaking in generalities and platitudes when we say anybody can do this. My Uncle Jay he's legally blind. He got one of these for Christmas this year, and he's just been blowing up the kitchen, right? Just killing every dish. He'll hit me up, text me or call me being like, oh my God, have you tried pork chops? Oh my God, have you tried a piece of salmon? Have you done this? Have you done that? Because it's fun to be successful in the kitchen, and this thing right here is it's the best sidekick in the world.
It definitely is. So over the next few weeks, we're going to do some exciting things with this. So one thing we're going to do is show you how we use this machine specifically to achieve incredible results. We're going to also do the poor man's method of sous vide
Without
cooking
a
to
doubt.
show you how you can do it at home without any investment other than a thermometer. We're also going to show you sort of side by side the difference in this technique compared to traditional techniques.
Which the steak is the best way to
Steak,
clearly show
roast
that.
chicken, something
Right.
like that, where we do it totally traditional in a
Right.
pan and an oven with all, you by hand and putting all the labor into it. And then how to do it sort of the modern way with sous vide cooking and make it totally easy on yourself. It's basically idiot proof. You cannot fuck it up. You cannot fuck it up. Unless you, like if you're cooking a chicken breast, right? You want it to be juicy and tender and delicious. I look for a little blush of pink, may not be your thing, but it's okay. There's no better way
Right.
to cook a chicken breast to that level of precision so that it's absolutely perfect for everything that you want to have in a chicken breast than doing it sous vide. I can't do it traditionally, and I've had a lot of practice. I can make a great roast chicken traditionally. Never going to be as good as doing it sous vide.
We were talking off camera. It's funny that the best roast chicken doesn't involve roasting the chicken at all.
It's a method that I sort of developed. It's not completely unique to me. I'm sure other people have done it, but I came up with it myself, and it's the perfect roast chicken.
It's not roasted.
Brown, crispy, cracker crispy skin, tender, juicy, succulent flesh, little blush through, juicy and moist and delicious. and it's not roasted at all.
Listen, we love the community that's been sort of established through our channel. We're leaving beginners and starting to push you a little bit into intermediate cooking. This one right here is a game changer. Less than 5% of the world's chefs know how to do this technique. So we're super excited about the possibility of showing you some really delicious food that you can do at home.
Even more exciting. So this technique wouldn't be available unless some genius adapted laboratory equipment to a kitchen,
right,
into cooking. There's lots of great laboratory equipment being adapted to kitchens right now that's super exciting. So one thing I would love to play around with is a rotary vacuum distillation machine. Say that 5 times fast. But basically you can make concentrated distillates out of any ingredient or group of ingredients that you want. So sort of in the way that people make vanilla extract out of vanilla, you could do that with anything in your own kitchen.
We can make a seal and just put it over there.
Some other things that being adapted to kitchens are things like centrifuges.
That's the one I want.
Immersion sonic baths.
That's a pretty cool one too.
Anti-griddles.
You know what?
A griddle that gets cold instead of hot.
You know what? In 10 years, there's going to be a commercial use that we can actually afford.
People are adopting dry ice and liquid nitrogen into cooking for controlling cold temperatures.
Yeah.
We might do some of that. Audie and I have a method of making...
We're definitely doing some dry ice cream.
Liquid nitrogen, at least food grade liquid nitrogen is kind of hard to get a hold of in this city. Kind of hard to get a hold of in this city. But dry ice is readily available to anybody, anywhere in the United States.
It's great. It works perfect.
And we're going to start using things like that in our cooking as well. Exciting stuff to look forward to. We're cooking with Dave and Audie.
Hey, real quick, you got some questions? We threw a lot of information your way. So you got some questions? Hit us up in the comments section. You know, let us know if we didn't clearly explain to you a question, or if you want just a little bit of a guide on where you should go to purchase it, and should I get a warranty? Should I not? If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask us.
We're cooking with Dave and Audie. I'm Dave.
I'm Audie.
If you like our stuff, please subscribe to our channel. Leave likes on your favorite videos. And if you do anything other than those things, leave us a comment. Tell us what you enjoyed. Tell us what you didn't enjoy. Tell us what you want to see us do in the future. Because it gets us excited about things that we're planning and doing. We appreciate you so much for taking your time to watch us. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.